Do you think that the LDS Church will reconsider its teachings that the American Indians are descendants of the Jewish race now that DNA evidence has proven that they are actually descendants of the Asian race?
Question 44. Do you think that the LDS Church will reconsider its teachings that the American Indians are descendants of the Jewish race now that DNA evidence has proven that they are actually descendants of the Asian race? First of all, DNA cannot prove ancestry past a few generations, and then it only works for individuals and not entire populations. In the study of population genetics, there are three effects that make the establishment of ancestry impossible for modern science. First, there's what's called the founder effect, in which the founder of a population, such as Lehi in the Book of Mormon, does not have typical DNA for the region that they are from, and thus the DNA identifies them as being from a different region. As we do not have direct access to the genetics of the founders of the Nephite and Lamanite peoples, we cannot prove that the founder effect is not affecting American Indian DNA. The second effect is what is called population bottleneck. This is when a catastrophic event, such as war or disease, greatly reduces the population and results in the extinction of many genetic markers which are not present in the remaining population. Now, in the history of the Americas, in the Book of Mormon and later, this population bottleneck happened 3 different times. First, at the death of Christ, when massive destruction and physical upheaval of the land caused the entire population of dozens of cities to be entirely destroyed. Then there was the mass destruction of the Nephites and the last wars of the people about 400 years later. Now these two, of course, are not recognized by modern scientists, but modern scientists do acknowledge that the European conquest resulted in such a bottleneck, which is the third event. So, in about 100 years, the native populations were decimated by war and disease. This would have resulted in many genetic markers being permanently destroyed from their population, and therefore making any definite conclusion as to what their ancestry was in general impossible. The third effect is what is called genetic drift, and this is a change in the genetic profile of a population due to random sampling that results in some genetic markers increasing in frequency and others decreasing. It's meaning that a natural process over time is that some genetic markers will eventually decrease to the point of disappearing completely from a population, while others increase to the point of dominating. And this genetic drift becomes even more pronounced after a bottleneck event happens, such as has been described. Now, given these 3 effects that any credible population geneticist will affirm, it becomes nearly impossible to prove the ancestry of really anyone, but especially those isolated populations such as are described in the Book of Mormon. There is also the consideration that after the time of the Book of Mormon, other peoples migrated to the United States or the Americas and blended with the American population. We know, for instance, that the Vikings visited North America in, I believe it was the 800s or 900s, and they had established a settlement that existed for about 20 years in Canada. So their genetic markers may have entered into the gene pool of the Americas. There is also evidence that Asian people had made contact with Mexico sometime in the 1200s. There is evidence that the Phoenician peoples possibly contacted the New World even during the time of the Book of Mormon. So with all the possible injections of foreign DNA, as well as the 3 effects that have been described that are well known to population geneticists, The idea that anyone can prove one way or another what the ancestry of the American Indians was, especially what it was 2,500 years ago, is naive at best. DNA cannot prove where the original settlers of the Americas came from or when they came.